Alrighty, how you doing there, folks? Haven't made you guys a video in a while. Been kind of breaking my promise, huh? I'm making you more videos. But here you are in for a real treat. This is a video that you'll want to hear about, so very exciting. The title of this video is King Arthur was Jesus Christ. So how does that happen? So let's just go to Jesus. Alright, so who was he? Jesus is a Toltec sorcerer. Toltec sorcerers can pretty much do anything. They're notorious for lots of things. They're notorious for being incredible thespians, philosophers, you know, like most of all the religious symbols on the planet that are the most esoteric religious symbols. Like if you go to the Vatican and they let you into the catacombs and you went down 6 miles down into the catacombs and you went to a room full of all these different artifacts and stuff like that, most of that stuff would be Toltec. Toltec sorcerers have this these practices that they do. And one of the practices is called dreaming. So dreaming. And it's not like when you hear white people talking about lucid dreaming. You know, that's bullshit. Okay? I'm talking about really, literally, they can dream up a double. And the double actually has a physical constituency. And they dreamed it up. Okay? Now if you read the book, Carlos Castaneda's book, The Art of Dreaming, you'll see what I'm talking about. So basically, Jesus had a twin, and Jesus' twin was Emmanuel. So Emmanuel is the actual real sorcerer. Okay, so Emmanuel dreamed up Jesus. Emmanuel phonetically means "I mean you well" or mammal. So that's telling you that Emmanuel is the mammal mold. The Manu, the mammal mold. So the Manu is the mold that means you will. So he dreamed up Jesus. Why? Because Aisu in Sanskrit means serpent, dragon, snake, or serpent, dragon, snake, or lizard, or whatever. And all the way over in the Toltec lands, in the Toltec areas, the Nahuatl speaking area, like where the Mayans come from and stuff like that, the ultimate god is a flying serpent, the phoenix or Quetzalcoatl, and then Kukulkan also, which are all three basically fire dragons. Okay? And so the reason now Jesus' name is not pronounced Jesus; it's pronounced Jesus, as in the Hispanic type or Mexican type of wording to it. So it's Jesus. That's Jesus' name. Now the connection to Emmanuel himself started out in all the way on the other side of the world, around India, Tibet, Kathmandu, the Kashmir, Nepal, Dharmasala, places like that. That's where he comes from. But there's a connection, there's an ancient connection that can be made to the Toltecs, to the Indus Valley culture. And that connection can be made all the way back hundreds of thousands of years. So, so basically, Emmanuel dreamed up Jesus for the specific reason that within the reptilian construct, the ability for unconditional love to be extruded into the matrix was not really available, because if you were more reptilian than you were mammalian, under conditions of dynamic tension, the animal nature tends to take over. Now, Egypt, or Kemet, was created to deal with that. That's why Egypt was a giant hospital university society. However, there were stragglers around and people that would, they would go to the university. They would, so it takes 40 years to go to, 40 total years to go to both of the temples to alleviate these issues that you have associated with the animal kingdom and the reptilian structure termed Gorgonism. So you heard of the Gorgons, Gorgonism. So there are lots of people that they would go half the time, then they wouldn't go, so they'd be halfway cured. And Rudolf Steiner even said that. He said that there were lots of people walking around on the earth that they looked completely human. But if you could see, as a seer, you could see their energy field, you would see that they're actually part animal. Wild, like animal from the animal kingdom, not a full mold like we are. Even though human means animal, monster. So even though human means animal, monster, man, it's still relatively apropos to explain what we are. But under conditions of dynamic tension, the people who had more of a reptilian or Gorgon genetics, or just more associated to the wild animal kingdom as well as our mode, Rudolf Steiner said that you would be able to see, if you were a seer, you'd be able to see that, that like this person right here is actually part cow, or this person right here is actually part horse, or this person right here is actually part hippo or something like that. You just can't see it because you can't see your energy field. So this is the reason why Jesus had to be born, had to be dreamed up by Emmanuel, so that Jesus could live this life with the reptilian structure or the Gorgonic structure and get unconditional love off into the matrix under those conditions where the animal nature doesn't take over. He was there to quell the animal nature. That's the reason why you get the metaphors of him dealing with the devil in the desert and all that kind of stuff and blah blah blah. And that's actually some literalness to that, but it's still a metaphorical story. So now when they were in the part of the world I'm talking about where Emmanuel comes from, so they came down from that part of the world and into Egypt, and it's really complicated. But I'm gonna put it like this: Jesus was the last Egyptian pharaoh. This is a long. You have to know advanced shit to put these dots together, and I do, but it would take 10 videos to explain these details. Let's put it like this: Jesus was the last Egyptian pharaoh. He was also heir to the throne of Egypt, Persia, and Rome simultaneously. And so he had some problems there, because the powers that be that were in the world did not want to relinquish all that power under one umbrella. They wanted the power for themselves. So a whole bunch of stuff went down, and Jesus himself was married, had a wife, they had children. Her name was Mary Magdalene, and she was a princess she was a Persian princess. This is the first century I'm talking about right now, first century. So Jesus was the last Egyptian pharaoh, heir to the throne of Persia, heir to the throne of Rome, and heir to the throne of Egypt, all at the same time. So he was married to a Persian princess. Her name was Mary Magdalene. She had other names, like as all royal people have multiple names. Like if you talk to Prince Charles, he's my buddy, but that motherfucker got about 15 goddamn names. You know what I mean? HRH, blah 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 blah. See, so that's how royalty works. So he had lots of names, right? So, but basically, when they were in that part of the world, they were pretty much known as Emmanuel, and Jesus. Now, some people say, "Oh, Jesus had a brother named James." They could have been using those names too and stuff like that. Like I said, Toltec sorcerers are notorious. Um, they are unbelievable, and they're unbelievable, notorious strategists also. So, whereas you think in a linear sense, they don't think like that. That's just a whole nother lesson, you know what I mean? But so basically, a whole bunch of stuff went down, and the negative motherfuckers got a hold of Jesus' family, and so they were like, "Look, we're gonna make a deal with you," and because they were into making deals. Because normally, whenever they traveled around the world together, now they weren't, they were Buddhists, because that's where Emmanuel came from. So they basically went around the world spreading the story of Buddhism to people. And but when they anywhere they went, pretty much in the world, they could prove that they were heir to the throne. It didn't matter where the fuck they were, where the fuck they went. They could prove they were heir to the throne. So generally, what they would do is they would just leave that monarchy intact or whatever. And as part of kind of a deal or whatever, they would just be like, "Look, okay, well, I'm just going to influence we're going to influence some of your social stuff. Mainly, we're going to influence your religion." Yeah. And so, because that's where people's idea of love comes from. I mean, people associate their idea of love generally in a culture to their religion, as well as other things. So that's generally what they would do. They would just leave the monarchy intact after proving to them, "Look, I'm the heir to the throne of your fucking place," okay? It doesn't matter where they went. They could go anywhere in the goddamn world, and pretty much they could prove that they were heir to the throne. And they were. Like I said, the negative powers that be got a hold of his family, and they're like, "Look, okay, so make a deal. We'll make a deal." And they made a deal so that he agreed. Emmanuel and Jesus, well, mainly Jesus, because Emmanuel was a sorcerer. So Jesus agreed to be exiled to Britannia, Great Britain, and his wife, in turn, had to be exiled to the south of France, in an area called Avignon. You might remember George Bush visited that like the last year he was president or whatever. And there's a real famous aspect, or the south of France, part of south of France called Rennes-le-Château. So you might be familiar with those two names or whatever. And so what came out of her bloodlines were, as she got there, and there was a reason why they couldn't be together, but that's another story. So what came out of her bloodlines were what was called, started out called the Merovingian kings. They were called priest kings, and that was her and her children's, basically their bloodlines started that. And then after that there was the Franks, and then there was the Carolingians. And the Carolingians are the ones that are responsible. Charles Martel, who was the grandfather of Charlemagne, is really the person that started true Christianity in Europe, true Catholicism and Christianity in Europe. He's the actual person that started it, and it's very noble. So it's not the Vatican system not the Vatican system. This is real true Catholicism, okay? Noble Catholicism, right? And so on the other side of things, Jesus was exiled to Britannia. And when he got there, there was already, traditions of Celtic royalty and blah, 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 blah. Like one thing people don't know is that at about 70,000 BCE, the Nile River was named after the Niall dynasty, the Niall kings of Ireland. So those Celtic traditions were already there. They were already deep, and they were already embedded. And so when they got there, when Jesus got there, he had a mercenary army, about 600 warriors. Incredible motherfuckers. I mean, like the best fighters on the goddamn planet, just about. So, if they weren't the best, they were fucking amazing. Okay, so basically, they were able, he was able to prove right away, pretty much, to all the Celtic kings that, he's heir to their throne. You know what I'm saying? So they set up shop there in Britain, and then they founded Camelot, and that's the reason why the Windsors today, the royal bloodlines of England, are actually, they're prescient over the other Celtic bloodlines, as well as the fact that it's pretty much proven by Sir Lawrence Gardner, who was historian and genealogist to 33 royal families while he was alive, and also basically the chief advisor on the Council of European Princes. So now Lancelot, at that point, see, that's how Lancelot's the mystical motherfucker off in the wings and shit. Lancelot is Emmanuel, and so Lancelot, this is the reason why King Arthur can't defeat Lancelot, because he's fighting against himself. He's fighting against his own better half. Okay, Lancelot is the better half of Jesus. Emmanuel is the better half, because Emmanuel is the origin of it. He's the one that dreamed Jesus up. See, so so this is the first century. Okay, so Jesus exiled. Now Jesus was one of the things that if you look at Jesus' name as Arthur, and you go back over to Persia real quick, you'll see that was the standard name for the Persian kings. It was Artra. So see, Art Ra. See, art god. So a king. See, and that's Arthur's prefix. So it's art of So you see, art of means I'm the king of Persia. Because where's It's in Persia. Okay. So is ancient Iran. See? So there's just so much to this story. But I thought I'd get the rudiments off of it to you. I could, definitely fill in all the details of it, stuff like that. But give you another little tidbit. Jesus is basically the founder of Tibetan Buddhism. When Jesus he incarnated as Zend, physical incarnation as Zend, Toltec sorcerers can reincarnate. Zend, who was the father of Zoroaster, who was the founder of Tibetan Buddhism, he wrote the Zend-Avesta, which is the basis of Tibetan Buddhism. That's pretty much it. I mean, the Sinclair dynasty in Scotland is where the royal house of David terminates, and it terminates because of the association of Scotland to Egypt. There's a story it's told. Some people believe it's mythological. Of course, it's not mythological. That there was an Egyptian, a Celtic princess, Hebrew princess, who was named Scota, and this is where Scotland gets its name. So, to make a long story short, a lot of details in there. The royal house of David, which is the bloodline of Jesus, terminates with the Sinclair dynasty today, with the Sinclair dynasty of Scotland. I just could make some speculations too about Arthur and Guinevere's relationship. You could speculate that maybe Arthur Arthur didn't really love her totally because he really was still in love with his wife, Mary Magdalene, but he couldn't be with her. That's a possibility. Or it's a possibility that those archetypes, those things had to be played out for several different reasons. For one, one is that Guinevere at some point became unsure whether or not he really even loved her because he was more enamored apparently with the rules of and the all the royal duties and stuff like that than he was with her. See, and so since Lancelot, which means to fuck a lot, was his better half, he basically taught Jesus the lesson that you can't forget about that. You can't forget to love your woman. See, and the lesson for her and for all women, because she's an archetype, is that if you're committed to one person, it's highly karmic to betray that person's trust, which is what she did, and with Lancelot. And so since she betrayed the trust with Lancelot, she wound up having to go to a convent for 30, 40 years or whatever to atone for the sin of that, to atone for that transgression of breaking his heart like that. Because by breaking his heart, it totally destroyed the cohesion of Camelot. See? Because he got so heartbroken and depressed over it. See? So that's a pretty good lesson. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good video. I mean, it's short, but it's a good video for what I wanted to say. But in a nutshell, I know it's not full. I know it's not an 8-10 hour lecture, which I could give on it, but it's basically the story, and it's the accurate information. So, oh yeah, and the connection of the Celts to the Toltecs, which makes Jesus a Toltec sorcerer, is that after the Toltecs, there's lots of, it's a known fact that there's lots of red-haired white people that lived in the Yucatan and South America, and also around Peru and places like that. And the Toltecs, well, the Aztecs actually, because this is where Arthur's bloodlines come from, Jesus bloodlines come from, the Aztecs, because the Aztecs were the first amongst the Zapotecs. The Zapotecs are the Toltecs, Olmecs, and Aztecs. The Aztecs were the first to mate with the white race. Okay. That's the reason why you hear the most folklore about human sacrifice to reptilian gods amongst the Aztecs. Okay. So, because the white people are more associated to the reptilian. So, so the associations are from that association. And also later on in history, after the Toltec Empire itself dissolved, the Toltecs, a known historic fact, that more than half the Toltecs became the Phoenicians, as well as the other part that made up the big body of the Phoenicians was Druids. So red-haired white people with magical powers, and they learned those magical powers during Atlantis from the Toltec sorcerers and sorceresses in the temples. They taught the white people that were able to learn it, and it was generally red-haired white people that were able to actually learn the indigenous sorcery techniques and actually be able to implement them and to understand the cognitive system of it. And then that just technically tells you that that's because red-haired white people aren't really white. Technically, believe it or not, red-haired white people are black. And so I'll tell you a little secret. You ain't gonna believe me anyway, so it don't matter. But the entire British crown, all the Windsors, they're all black. And they don't believe me. They all have red hair. All of them. As a matter of fact, the Romanovs all did too, so they were black. Any royal person you see around the world's got red hair, that person's really black. As a matter of fact, some of the ones that don't even have red hair are really black. And they know it, actually. But they ain't gonna tell you. They just look white. Okay. But you can watch their characteristics and you can tell they're not really white. Like Prince Albert of Monaco is black. Ain't no white man on the fucking planet that goddamn smooth. Remember how smooth Roger Moore was in James Bond? Get a close up of his hair. But anyway. I think it's probably that's probably a basic story. So yeah, so there you go, folks. Thank you very much. Have a great day.